All right, Gunners, full time at the Emirates, and Arsenal won that game 2 goals to one, and we're back on top of the Premier League. And this game was very nervy, and it wasn't really about the performance for me. And like I said, I would take the points over performance right now in December because this is December football and it's all about winning. Listen, Manchester City also struggle against Nottingham Forest, and we're not comparing ourselves to them. But it just goes to show you that December football is really, really tough. We're playing at the Emirates where we are unbeaten. So we're going to break down this game. Um, and we're going to look at three things. Arsenal did well, what Arsenal could improve, and we'll also look at this game in the context of our road to 90 points and the framework for that. So let's break it down properly. Three ups, three downs. Let's go. Okay, before we talk tactics, let's talk about, the presence and the return of our captain to what looks like, his best form. Martin Ødegaard in this game was simply imperious. He just reminded everyone why he wears the armband and why it really suits Arsenal the way that he plays. He scored a goal from outside of the box, which was clean, confident, decisive, but I think the real story about Martin Ødegaard today was about control. He made a number of key passes in this game, and I'm going to look at his stats from Opta analyst. And every time Arsenal needed something, Martin Ødegaard was there. He was the outlet. He was the person that was connecting the defense to the attack, the midfield to the attack. And I just don't think that Brighton knew how to handle him, especially in the first half. He had 96% pass completion in the whole game, which is extremely, extremely high. Out of 49 passes, he had 47 accurate ones. That's really, really good. And a lot of these passes were passes that were moving forward as well. And he had the most key passes in the game, and he was central to every Arsenal attack. Um, and I think that if he can continue to play with this sort of form, I think Arsenal will do very well. It does ask questions about how you fit the likes of Eze into a team like this. But for now, Martin Ødegaard is my first up in this game, and he was absolutely brilliant. And actually, I think there is an honorable mention for Raya here. No secrets. I've never really have been a Raya fan, but I have to come around to say that he has been performing like what I wanted him to perform. A goalkeeper that actually wins you points in the season. And it was for a long time, I couldn't really look at Raya and say, hey, he's won us this point. So he's won us this successive of games. But now I can confidently say that I think this game would have been so much different without that wonder save by Raya. Arguably the save of the season, let's be clear. So honorable mention, for Raya and also for Saka as well. Second up for me was that Arsenal, um, found ways to win, even when the game got ugly. These are margins and that are very, very important. And it's a muscle memory that you have to remember that you don't give up, you get yourself in the right positions, do the right things, and you see out the game. Once you're in front, there is no reason why you should give up the lead or not take the 3 points home. The second goal really mattered in this game. Declan Rice corner, creating all kinds of problems. And hey, we were called set piece FC, the beginning of the season. I don't mind being called own goal FC, right? We've now scored, what is it now? 4 own goals at the Emirates, if you include the one that happened in the Crystal Palace Cup game. And we'll take that wherever we get it. I don't care. At this point in time, like I said, it's all about the points. Own goal LFC, don't mind about it. We'll own it with our chest and we'll keep going. Look, we're scoring decisive goals. And it's not about spontaneity, it's not luck. These things are actually intentional. And it just tells me now when the games flatten out, Arsenal still has a plan. And in a title race, that's even more important than aesthetics. And it's the one thing that, Man City can rely on. They know that when the game gets tight, they might be Checky or they might be Foden or maybe it'll be Haaland that will pop up and do something. And I think, we shouldn't feel ashamed that we're finding ways to win game. People can say what they want. The most important thing is a 3 point that goes into the table for Arsenal. My third up, guys, has to be Gabriel coming back. I think we've missed him, very much. He's so integral to that defensive solidity, and we started losing that as soon as we started having, injuries to that center back pairing of Saliba and Gabriel. They're going to need some time to build that up again, but I'm so glad that he's back. And his organization, his authority, he balances the temperament between Saliba and himself. And Saliba just knows, how to perform. There were a couple of examples, in this game when they were both in the game, and they were just so calm. They knew what each other person was going to do. There was a time that Gabriel was going for the ball, and then Saliba backed off as well. And that works. That's communication with players that have good chemistry. So I think that a defensive solidity is just going to go up, now that Gabriel is back. So definitely, he was up for me, and I don't think Arsenal closes out this game without Gabriel. And I think this is what is going to shock some people, because now that we've got our centre back pairing back, we just need to figure out what's happening with our fullbacks. But if we have a complement, back five in shape, I think we can still feel a little bit more comfortable and confident going into this run of games. Listen, as we always do this thing, we always talk about where Arsenal can improve. And of course, there are areas for Arsenal to improve. First one for me, Brighton had too many moments. And I think this needs to be said, clearly. Arsenal dominated possession, but Brighton created lots of shots. That's not something that you can brush aside, especially in the second half. They stayed alive, they stayed dangerous. And look, there are lots of teams that are going to be coming to the Emirates and are going to do exactly that. And we know one team that's going to do exactly that in the coming days, and that's that game on Tuesday with Aston Villa. Listen, um, we cannot allow teams to keep staying long in game, because what they will do is they will create a chance. And this team seems to be very super focused, because they know that they're not going to get lots of chances when they play Arsenal. And maybe that's also a reflection on us. I wanted a sense of urgency from Arsenal. I know that we create a lot of chances, but I feel like we're almost too arrogant in the fact that we just believe that we will always create chances, and we're not sensing the urgency and taking advantage of those chances. Martinelli should have scored. Absolutely should have scored, when he got that chance. And in games like this, especially as we cross over to the business end of the season, we can't afford not to be taking those chances. So second down for me, um, Calafiori getting injured, in the warm up. I honestly do not understand why we get so many injuries at Arsenal. Something really, really needs to be looked at. I know one way of doing that is to stockpile players, but I think that it actually masks what the real issue is. What is the real reason why Arsenal continue to get so many injuries during the season? It's just crazy. Calafiori couldn't start. MLS needed to come in, and for me, yes, we coped, but it wasn't seamless. And Brighton found a lot of joys in rebounds, transition, second phases, and this is exactly where cohesion, matters the most. But I know that we can manage those disruptions, but I think we can live without it. I really do. I think the final thing for me, in terms of the third down, I've already talked about it. We need to finish games properly, right? Take the hope out of the opposition and make games dead and buried. At 2-0, this game should have been done, right? And then Brighton then score from a rebound. And then that Minte shot that brought an absolute worldy save from Raya. And then, of course, it creates a lot of negative energy in the stadium and also around the pitch. So we just need to close out games, especially when we're on the lead. Now, listen, it was the 3 points. 3 points is the most important thing, in this sort of games. And listen, what I want us to do is to be really, really super focused on what this means for Arsenal going forward. We're talking about the 90 points that's going to be required for Arsenal to actually win this league. And if we zoom out, because this is where perspective really, really matters, in our road to 90 model, Brighton at home sat firmly in that manageable games bucket, right? So it was a game that we had to win, especially the home game, and we've taken that. That's 3 points. So Arsenal took the point. We stayed on course. Arsenal avoided dropping ground after City won earlier on. That was really, really important. And that's key, right? Because this is all about keeping that maths alive, for us at Arsenal. And hey, listen, we're back on top, guys. But this game was also a reminder. A lot of these games are gonna be like that. The margins still matter. Control still needs to be sharpened. But we take the point, we take the lesson, and we get better faster. Guys, drop your thoughts. Who do you think was the man of the match in this game? I thought Ødegaard was the man of the match for me. Did this feel like progress? Listen, we're going to win games a lot like this, but honestly, I think we just need to stay calm, stay behind the team. And, as always, guys, I always appreciate every single one of you, watching, subscribing, and writing, this channel and this season with me. I'll be back to do a preview of the Arsenal Aston Villa game, and this game is huge, huge in the context of the reverse fixture and us building the confidence. Villa just won right now at Chelsea, so they're going to be so full of confidence coming into Arsenal. We need to make this a 3 point without any question and just bring them down a peg. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.